You've got it tuned into the Zealous Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, Bobby Aldridge, a movement specialist in his company, Plyometrics, joins me. Known Bobby for ages. We're going to have a really good conversation all about the quality of movement. But before we get underway, remember, continuing education, it's kind of that time of year. You got to get them together, all those units. So why not go to our website, rockysnyder.com. We've got online and in-person workshops happening for athletic trainers, physical therapists, strength trainers, and the like. Also, go to satantacollege.com. They've got programs in applied sport and exercise psychology, performance coaching, applied sports biomechanics and movement science, and of course, sports injuries and return performance management. satantacollege.com. Enter RS10 for 10% off tuition today. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. If you haven't clicked that subscribe button, come on, get with it and enjoy the show. Bobby, I can't thank you enough, man. I mean, we go back, I don't know how many years now. I honestly, I lost count from the first time we met. It's just like things click. We seem to speak the same language. We look at movement in a very similar fashion. We see things that are missing, and we have ways of plugging those holes. So I don't know what the heck is up with me that it's taken me this long to get you on the Zealous podcast. But first of all, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rocky. Yeah, I've really enjoyed all these years of learning from you. So,
Well, it's mutual because you got some really cool things. So tell the listening audience first. I guess I should qualify you in a manner of ways. You've worked with numerous PGA players on tour and off tour. You've worked with Olympians. You've worked with NBA players. You've worked with such high caliber athletes. We don't have to name names, but you have been helping the pros and the Olympians for quite some time now. How did that all get? How did you get your start? And not just working with those athletes, but with BAM Metrics, your company, Bobby Aldridge Method. Like, give us the superhero origin story.
so it started out, back in college. I was an athlete and played basketball and baseball at the University of San Francisco. And then I got a degree in kinesiology, got out and started, training and teaching people how to move. And like I say all the time, 30 years in this business now, I feel more confused now than I ever was my first year in. My first year in, I thought I was the smartest guy in the room. I know it all. I'm ready to roll. Now it's like there's a lot of smart people out there. So I'm constantly going to summits. I'm constantly trying to learn from guys like you. And I just really enjoy now trying to find the why. Why is this working? Why is that, And for me, it's helping average people and pro athletes, either one in between. I'm just trying to make them get better at what they do, whether they just want to walk down the street or they want to jump higher. And so I'm always curious to trying to figure these things out. And over the last 12, 13 years, I came up with a few tools that help my clients and patients do their exercises when I'm not with them. And so I don't know, I have 13 certifications and all the different things, all the summits I go to. All that knowledge is how I try to figure out how these people move and how I can help them. And I'm always going down the rabbit hole a little bit too often. I chase the, where's more knowledge? Where's more knowledge? I need more. I need more. I got to understand this better. And for me, with you guys, I literally love going to the summits and sitting down after you guys give a nice talk and trying to find out the why of how that works. And that's where you come in very often for me. So
Yeah. Okay. So there was the time where you thought you knew everything in the younger years. Where was that moment? I've got my own moments and happy to share, but I want to know yours. What were those moments? You might want to call them epiphanies, enlightenments, the light bulb moments, so to speak. Were there landmark times where you're like, oh my gosh, forget what
it,
I've learned or what I need to go here?
yeah, just different guys I would work with over the past, the Albion Connies, the Donald Chews, the Gray Cook, the different guys when I go to the summit and I'm thinking I'm doing this. And then it was like, oh my God, it works better like that. And it was like, oh. So I used to love that epiphany when you have that. But in the beginning, when you know one certification, one way to assess, one way, it really simplifies it because you're doing just that. But then as you learned these different things, The one of the fun ones for me was the box jumping. I mean, I literally learned how to box jump from a soccer player. He was a goalie, and he goes, "Yeah, it makes you move faster to the side and up." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then I start messing around with it, and then I read the book Don Chu's Jumping into Plyometrics, and it was like
Hmm.
eye opening to go, "Oh my God, so if we go this height, we could do that." And we're starting to figure that out. My brother and I were like little, lab rats. We try things all the time, stupid things. I mean, literally, that's why I had 2 hip replacements last year. Is I literally we used to jump off 10-foot ladders to increase our vertical. So
Oh, dude, I
if
remember
30,
those days. Oh my gosh, the depth
if
jumps. They were trying to figure out
yes,
what was the most optimal height to jump from. People were getting messed
yes,
up so bad. I didn't know you were one of them.
yes. I'm one of them, but I mean, we didn't know it at the time. We didn't feel it. It was just like a matter of we would do it. So, I mean, funny story is we're up in our summer house. We're up in Jackson, and we're jumping off the porch over the cement to land on the grass. It's like 8 feet up. Land on the grass, jump up in the air, land, and then walk back up. Get up on top, jump off, land, jump up in the air, walk around. And so we used to do all these things in the Olympic lifting and the power lifting. And I remember when CrossFit first came out, it was like, "Hey, Bob, they're doing your workout," because we were doing the Olympic lifting, the power lifting, all the bodybuilding, plyometrics, stair hopping, all that stuff. But we had no idea how much to do and what to do. And, we were grabbing from everything. And so, like I said, 2 hip replacements last year I had to deal with. And I thought my left was fine because I had my right done. And then after the doctor goes, "Oh, you're going to need the left done." I'm like, "No, no, no, I won't. I'm fine." I get the right done, and I'm like, "Oh my God, my freaking left really hurts." This one hurts so bad. I couldn't believe that this one needed that. So, like I said, a lot of when I give talks and I talk about this stuff, a lot of lessons learned failing, a lot of lessons over these years getting injured. And that's what's humbled me with all the stuff is you try something and it doesn't work, or you get injured, or you don't know why, and then you go try to find the why, and all of a sudden you make a change. And so it took some years, right? We're Superman in the beginning. Our egos are huge. We're athletes. We're competing. And then it started to, 28 years old, 30 years old. And then you start to go, and you start to pay attention more. You have a little more wisdom. And now I'm 55. So it's now a question of, how can we help those younger guys and the athletes and those senior citizens just move better, feel better? That's really the goal now. So,
And so that is what kind of inspired your whole process. I'll say your the methodology that you've realized that giving people actual feedback, like visual feedback to see where their imbalances lie, where their restrictions are by giving them measurements actually around their environment. That's been a key part. Would you agree?
for sure. One of my favorite things is the medicine ball push-ups, and it's. I always wondered. I thought it was a push-up that we're just doing this exercise to build strength through our shoulders and core. It's push-up. And I talked to Don Chu one day, and I said, "Man, this is making us so strong. Like, what the heck? Why is this working so well?" And he goes, that is core strength. And he says, "You're working from the shoulder, from the hand, all the way down to the opposite foot." He said, "What does your back foot feel when you do that?" And it's because we were measuring from wide to closer to closer. We actually know what we can do, so we can work time under tension with the core strength, and we can measure it. So a tremendous exercise that normally we would do that exercise, but we wouldn't do it exactly. And you'd go to where you're comfortable, not to where you can do it. And that's the whole key with the different exercises by measuring it. A hinge, for example, where do you stand? Are you 40 inches apart? Or are you 30 inches apart? And it doesn't matter if you're a senior citizen or you're a pro athlete, but what's your number, and do you own that range of motion? You want to know mobility is the movement of flexibility with stability. And a lot of people can get really wide with their feet, but they can't get up, right? So if they keep their feet closer together, that's the mobility part. And when you explain that to them, to a layman, all of a sudden they can see like, oh yeah, I can do it at 30, but when I get to 34, I can't move from there. Now they're aware of it, and then we can do some strengthening stuff with bands or soft tissue or things like that. And then we can retest 34, and they all of a sudden say, wow, I can do that range of motion. So the metrics have really helped with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Dr. Gary Gray, he calls it the transformational zone, right? It's the point that you reach where most of your mechanoreceptors are going to light up. It's that end range that people typically aren't going to go to. They're, like you say, they're staying inside their comfort zone, their safety zone. And if you live a life of comfort, you're not going to experience change, right? And that affects our physical bodies in regards to movement as well. If we stay inside the confines of a hallway or a jail cell and do our lifts in that regard, then that's all well and good. We'll be strong right there, but we're not actually teaching the body force transference, activation of the deeper intrinsic musculature that allows for more kinematic sequencing to occur. It's getting to those hard to reach places safely and then learn how to return back to home, because that's if I can put it in my own words in a way, that's what I see you doing with your mat. And for the listening audience, I've got a couple of mats in my facility here. We use them quite regularly. The mat is it's about 6 feet long, 72 inches, and it's got
Yeah.
grids as well as measurements down the midline, numbered, so that you can give people an idea of, I want you to reach to this number. I want you to reach to the same opposite side, but the same distance. Or let's just see how you reach here. Do you notice that you're unable to reach to the same degree on this side as you are that side? Oh my gosh, I thought I was doing the same, but you're absolutely right. Wow. I bet it
Yeah.
brings some awareness to your clients, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is feel isn't always real. That's like a Joey
Mm,
D saying is feel isn't always real. They say that a lot in the golf world. And when you do an exercise, if you lunge forward with your right and then step back and then lunge with your left, if your hip is rotated a little bit more forward on that right side, it's going to be a different step and you're not going to even notice it. You're just going to do it. So if you repeat that now, and I'm going to do 4 sets of 10, you're doing 40 of those on the right side at that position. And then you're doing 40 on the left side. And that you're actually causing compensation, right? So that goes on in the fitness world all the time. I watch
yeah,
athletes
we're
do this.
reinforcing the crappiness of movement.
Yes. And so when we're doing, I don't like to say it, but corrective exercise, let's do it
Yeah.
correctly on both sides. And so that's why that's why I made the mat simple. I could have put more metrics. People were like, hey, why don't you do it sideways like that? Why don't you do it more numbers there? I'm like, no, I just want one measurement down the middle. Boxes were to help you with where to stand or how far to step out. I wanted it simple. And that's why I did it like this. Because I could have made you've seen some of the mats out there that have circles and lots of lines, and it's a little
Oh yeah.
overwhelming for the patient or the client or the athlete to like, what do I do with that? This is super
Yeah, it looks
simple.
like the
I
the
put
cockpit of a commercial jet airliner.
Yes, yes. And so I did this to make it so simple that you can take somebody and say, you're going to do some mini band walks to the side, and you're going to put on the light band. You're going to do one box, and I want you to go over and back twice. And they do it. Then I go, great. Now go to two boxes, and they can do two boxes back and forth. But it's super simple because it's just a box and a line down the middle. It's not complicated. And then, like I said, there's hundreds of exercises that you can do on there. So it's not like it's for one thing or another. It just helps with, hey, client, put your feet two boxes apart and go, whatever that exercise is. And it's been super helpful for my patients and athletes.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. Feel is not real. Our posture, our structure normalizes neurologically. We just consciously, wherever we are in space, it becomes a resting posture based on previous experiences and getting around the issues in the tissues and all those things. And before you know it, it just becomes the normal way of being. So that is what constitutes real for a lot of people, but it may not be proper. So giving them an outside perspective and giving them an experience where they understand it, well, there is a nice buy-in for them to realize the efficacy of your approach, but also the quality of your instruction and expertise. But it goes beyond the mat. This isn't turning into an infomercial by any stretch, but I do want to explore some of the tools that you've developed and used, because they are quite simple, but mostly everything that is simple is very effective. The more complicated it gets, the more likely there's going to be mistakes. But your tools are very simple and easy to use with the layperson and the athlete. So aside from the mat, and we can go back to the mat and talk about variations that you can use with it, what else did you come up with?
So I started with a yoga strap. Basically, I was drawing lines on a yoga strap, telling my golfers, "Hey, hold your hands here and do this fascial turn like this." And I'd draw lines. And one day I'm like, "Oh my God, why don't I just put numbers on it?" And then I can tell them, grab it at 28. Good. Then move in 2 inches. Now grab it at 26. So it's a yoga strap with numbers and has a little bungee on there, so it's not too stiff. And then I came out with the blocks that I use for height differences. Like if you're doing a spread feet wide with your feet and your hands on the ground, some people can't get to the ground because their feet aren't wide enough. So the blocks, you can put them on 12 inches, 10 inches, or 6 inches. So it helps them do the rotational move with their hand on a block. Then like you can use those blocks like on the ground to do, squeezes with your knees, or you want to do a bretzel and you can't quite get your knee down towards the ground. You can put that right underneath the knee and it helps with the movement. So you can teach somebody, like on the left side, they're on 10 inches. And when they switch, they go, "Oh my God, it's so much easier on this side. I'm like not struggling to get my shoulder down. Yeah, the other side needs some more work. We got a little compensation going." But the client sees that. The athlete actually can see that. So I have all my people test and feel the difference of the right to left. And if you feel something, let's go do something outside of that to make it better, whatever that's going to be. And I loved like the other day when you were talking about my umbilical hernia surgery, and I leaned to the left, I leaned to the right, and you're like, "Bob, put your hand right there in your belly, right there, right where the incision was," and how I could go a little bit further. It like it's nice to have a measurement to see, oh my God, I can feel the difference. So that's what those blocks do. It helps with that, to they can actually feel the difference, because if they don't have a block there, they don't understand that one side their knee's way up in the air, like 12 inches, and on the other side it's down towards the ground. So they're compensating, they're rotated. Um,
Yeah.
so that so, and then the bands I just use, those are just regular bands that I use for the mat, because I put a kit together for my people. So they have the mat, the blocks, and the bands. Um, and then one of my last tools was the vest that you put on. You lay on your back and you hook your foot in. So it's like using something on your foot, but it's hands free. So you can just lay
Mm.
there and stretch and go through range of motion. I had these three ladies that were trying to do it years ago, and they couldn't hold the yoga strap because their hands were weak. So they try to do the stretch going back and forth on their back, and their hands it would pull out of their hands. So I went to look for something online. I couldn't find anything. And I don't know, crazily tried to make this thing, and it worked out really well. So it's a vest. It's hooked to a yoga strap, basically, that hooks to your foot, but it has a number. So you know that you're at 15, 14, 13, like a handicap that's getting lower. So if you do some soft tissue work outside of the vest, you can notice, like when you put your foot across, the IT band's a little bit tight. I'm a little tight in my hip. And you do some soft tissue, you get back in at 14, and it adjusts to the movement. And you can say, "Oh, that's better. Oh my God, that feels better." So it helps the clients like see that they're improving. Like, why do I do soft tissue work? Some people don't really understand it. But when they have a metric and they can go back to that metric and see it got better. I just had a guy this morning that's new to all this, and he didn't really understand soft tissue. But when I showed him right to left, how do you feel in your adductor? And then I had him do a little soft tissue work on that adductor and go back to that, check his number. He was like, "Oh my God, that makes that much of a difference." It was like, that's what this is for. It helps them understand, oh my God, okay, now I'm going to do that, right? Because otherwise they feel it, but they're not sure. I don't know if that's helping. You know what I mean? You know how it is with
I
new
do.
people. So that happens. So yeah.
So you bring up a kind of a cool point too that came in front of my awareness recently is that we've both been in the industry a number of decades now, and we've both been pursuing rabbits down, I wouldn't say holes, more like warrens. We've been following them down into the village where it just goes every direction. And as we gain more insight, more experience, aka knowledge, I believe that becomes normalized also. Where, and what I mean by that is that we just come to, at least I can only speak for myself, I guess. I come to feel like where I understand movement is basically where everybody else understands movement. But then when we go and talk to other professionals, I'm aware that the the concepts we're getting across may be more advanced than where they are. And so my question to you is, um, do you find yourself in that scenario? And when that occurs, what do you do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways to explain things, and it seems like some people are really wordy about the stuff and they really have a great explanation anatomy and they're getting into it in depth. And I'm a real simple guy. I'm gonna watch a movement, feel a movement, do a movement, and then I want to understand kind of what's going on there. That's why I love talking to Don Chu and asking him, hey, like these medicine ball push-ups, they're freaking making me so strong, I don't know why. And it all of a sudden connect the dot. I love that. But sometimes I get lost in the words with some of these guys that are speaking and going into some of the real detail of anatomy. And I think they're overcomplicating it sometimes for the patient, for the client, that sort of stuff. So you can get lost in the weeds that way, I think sometimes, but I've always been a kind of keep it simple guy. And I want to understand that why, like I said, that's what I'm always chasing is, and I said that to, I don't know if it was Greg Cook or Greg Rose. I was saying like I love listening to you guys try to explain it because you guys explain it in simple terms. Like you simplify it. And I really like that because I hate being like lost. Like Charlie Weingroff, he's a super smart guy. He sometimes goes into some serious depth, and it's above my pay grade, you know. And so I'm trying to understand it. I'm listening. I'm like, damn, I thought I knew this, but I'm not really getting it. So it's like sometimes. And how do you handle that? How do you handle like? Do you go research it? What do you do about really getting into that, understanding that?
Uh, for me, in regards to realizing that I have to back out of it and make it very simple. And what I mean by that is I was doing a presentation earlier this year, and there were several people in attendance that are very young trainers. They're new to the industry, and I guess that was my point: is that COVID, we lost 100,000 trainers, and we're gaining them back
Mm,
slowly. And so a
mm,
lot of those that we lost were seasoned veterans, and they just said, I'm tired of this, and I got to go find a different vocation. Uh, and
wow.
and so now we've got all these new faces coming into conferences, clinics, and seminars, and they have a good deal of insight and information, but it's limited to the time that they've spent learning. And so I recognize that we need to go back to the basics. We have to keep it simple and not necessarily cater to the lowest common denominator. I'm not saying that, but just keep the concepts because they're not going to change anything. The concepts are basically truths of human movement, if you will, and just keep
Yeah.
revolving around that. And we can always expand upon that. I guess that's where I go. But it made me realize that these different presentations that I'm thinking of, I don't think we're going to go in that direction. I think I need to just back down, keep it simple, look at the look at the tools, look at the concepts, and go from there.
And
So
like I said, there's a foundation of movement, and like you said, people are
yeah,
always seem to be chasing the shiny object, I call it, and they
yes,
want to instead of building the first floor and the foundation of the movement, like I said, with your wedges, I love that, how you're starting from the ground up. Then you build the second floor. Then you build the third floor. Then the building won't fall over. But you have these trainers that go to these conferences and they start chasing exercises, not the
Yes.
why of why they're going to use that exercise. So, I'm always looking for that. What's a better exercise or what's a better way to do it? I don't want to waste somebody's time, but why am I doing that? And that's what I think we have to teach these trainers when we speak to them is when you pick an exercise, how is that going to help your client do what they're trying to accomplish? And if they don't understand it, how are you going to explain it to them so then they want to do it? That's the hard part.
Mm.
Sometimes you listen to them, you listen to your client, and they say they want to do X or Y. You might do Z to get them to get X or Y. So it's like, but you have to get them to buy into the process. I mean, I have a guy that keeps telling me I don't need to hit the ball longer, and he needs to hit the ball longer. And I got to tell him other things that he's going to do to make his golf game better, but not with because if I say hit the ball longer, he doesn't want that. So he's not motivated by that. And I think we got to do that with the trainers that are new, because some of them, if we don't say the right things to them and get them to connect the dot, they're like, I'm not doing that. That's not going to, I want to perform better. I'm strong. I'm big. you know, I remember those days, like we said,
Heck yeah.
yeah, you know, Rotex was one of those. I had a great talk with, is it Justin James and Eddie, the long drive guys. And I stood on those Rotex and 17 years ago, stood on them. I'm like, dude, I lift big weights and do this. How is this going to help me? Are you kidding me? And I walked off. And Justin James told that story. And I went up to him and I said, Justin, I did the same thing, man. 17 years ago, I looked at those. But now that I really understand the body for golf and how the body moves, I'm like, that's a great device. That's a really good device. So, that's the hard thing that we're dealing with, Rocky, is getting those young bucks to understand how much this is going to build a strong foundation and then layer on your shiny objects. Go to that shiny object, layer 1, layer 2, level 3, and build the platform. But that's what I see is with the young people or the newbies and or people set
Well,
in their ways,
do you find that it's promoted within the industry of strength and conditioning? This the search for shiny objects. Do you think that eh, maybe inadvertently that this is occurring? Like because the stuff that you do, I'm going to say, is not the most conventional approach. It should
right?
be. It should be, by all means, getting the body to be free of restriction for proper force production, power production, omnidirectional, and being
Yeah.
specific to the needs of the individual. That's what you do. But within our industry, which I love to death, and that's why I'm still in it many decades through, we have our shortcomings. We have been founded upon the firmament from which we have grown has been strictly with barbells and dumbbells. If we think about the early years of this, saying late 70s through the 80s, it has been primarily strictly through resistance training. Like strength training is the end all be all, and it's the panacea for every athlete. But do you know where I'm going with this? Like, is it our
Yeah,
industry
yeah.
that is trying to germinate and grow these young trainers to look for the shiny objects, or is that changing?
What I'm hoping that's changing because it seems like, physical therapy years ago used to go there and they only work on your hip. Now they know you got to look at the other side. So you got to check the body. You can't just work on where the pain is. We now know this stuff. So, but are they changing it in physical therapy? Because I get so many people from physical therapy all the time. And I used to be a performance coach. I was the performance, train the teams. Like a pain therapist. People come to me all the time in pain, and I'm fixing
Yeah.
one after the next. In 1 to 3 sessions, they're feeling better. Wow, that was amazing. 1 to 3 sessions. I had the
Hmm.
San Francisco Giants doctor. His wife had pain for 6 years, and she had, acupuncture, all the San Francisco Giants, all their people, right? Acupuncturists, physical therapists, all that. 6 years. She saw me Wednesday, 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 3 Wednesdays in a row. On that third Wednesday, she decided, I'm going to go play golf tomorrow on Thursday. Shoots her lowest round ever. She says, I feel so good. I'm going to go out and play Friday. She beats that score the next day. So the husband calls and goes, Hey, what are you doing with her over there? And he comes over for a couple of weeks and then he goes, Hey, have you thought about writing a book on this? And I'm like, Yeah, I'm actually, multiple people have been saying that. And so I'm literally working on a book right now while we're talking, trying to figure out how to tell the story to help people start to implement this stuff with the metrics, with the movements. And like I said, it's been 30 years of figuring out these movements, but just recently I'm coming out with the Dirty Dozen. I'm calling it the Dirty Dozen. And it's
Is
like you need to do these because it gets the job done. This is my and some of these young guys won't even know what we're talking about, but I mean, you know the movie, The Dirty
it?
Dozen,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
They come in, they get the job done. And that's what I want to teach people is these are simple movements and they're measurable and you can track it and it's going to change how you move so you can go do what you love to do. Because you know how it is. You got to tell a golfer that you're doing golf exercises. You got to tell a tennis player you're doing tennis exercises. You got to tell grandma this is going to help you walk better. But the main event about this is you're human. I'm making you human. I'm making you move better as a human, not a golfer. You need to move better. And then when you can move better, well, we'll get to the shiny objects and we'll start doing the fancy movements and the rotational and the blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? But get the foundation of movement down and then let's level up. And that's where I'm going with this now. So
Yeah, I love it. I so love it. Dirty Dozen's a great name too. So what I also like last week's episode, I had Dr. Ryan Como on with Kinetisense and markerless motion capture. And what they are doing through the use of a camera is measuring movement of different sorts.
uh,
And it appears on the screen and you can show your clients, you can show the measurements. I think it's remarkable tool. And
that's
overlay
awesome.
that on to the way in which you're measuring movement in the gym setting with the movements themselves. I mean, I'm loving it because one, it opens up the option or the availability to actually conduct research to show the efficacy of these types of methods, these approaches, just the philosophy of movement in essence,
Mhm.
compared to where we have a whole bunch of research on strength and conditioning currently, which is measured in a completely different environment in many ways. So I guess what I'm saying is for years now, you and I have been doing a lot of work and we can cite anecdotally. We can share experiences that our clients, athletes, patients have experienced with the work that you've done over the course of a single session or several. But nonetheless, there hasn't been enough objective measurements to be worthy of peer reviewed periodicals and research. But now it would seem that
Mhm.
we're at that point where utilizing your tools that you've developed, maybe even in conjunction with a device similar to what Kinetisense has, could be the thing that's needed to start to show that this is really a viable and effective direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you that right there is it'll be great to test an exercise and actually show them when we use that device that it made a change. Like we did this, it actually improved their movement like right away, and you can see it with an app like that that's working like that. That's awesome. The nice thing
So,
about
do you
our
have any universities? Do you have, sorry, but do you have any universities, colleges, or sports teams that have researchers, sports scientists that are starting to utilize your tools at this point to do any sort of research?
Well, yes, I had USC. I went down there to talk to the head guy, Rick Schroeder, And I went in and said, hey, Rick, you're the guy. You measure all the stuff for Nike, for Reebok, they do all the supplements, all the stuff. He measures everything. And he goes, Bob, do you have an extra 50,000? And I go, not really right now. And he goes, because you don't need to do this. Yours is right there. It's objective. Why would you run a study? We know it works because their foot now from 40 is now at 42. That's objectively right there. He says, the things that I do are apps and things like that, and an Apple Watch. You have to prove that that's going to work right. And I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. But everybody always wants research, research, research. And he goes, Bob, yours is objective. It's right there. It's showing them, can you do medicine ball push-ups and put your hand in this box and that box and then this box and that box? He says, it's right in front of you. And I said, that's what my whole thing was with the USC football. Benny Wiley next year, I'm looking forward to implementing this in with their football team, because we're going to measure the wide receivers versus the linemen versus the running backs. What can they do? And foot position. Am I putting bands on their ankles, or am I stacking their ankles so they're on a single point while they do it, where it gets to be very difficult? And we're going to have numbers, because can they do 14, rest 90 seconds, 14, rest 90 seconds? It's specific. There's no guessing. It's right there in front of us. So yeah, those are the things that I'm excited about doing with the teams and implementing, because we're going to get numbers. I'm going to know if somebody's core strength is good and their body's connected, because if they can do 21 and then do 90 seconds later, another 21, and then another 90 seconds later, another 21, that's off the charts. That's good core strength, good upper body strength, good time under tension. But most of these guys can't do 14. They fall on their face, right? Unless they're like a bodybuilder. The best guys that are across the board, the best, are my gymnasts and rock climbers. They're the most connected, and they can do the events. So for me, it's nice to have these kind of numbers. Can you do a wall windmill 30 with your arms up, then go 3 boxes, 30 with your arms up, and then widen your feet to 5 boxes and do 30 with your arms up? Most people can't do that. Time under tension, they can't take it. Their bodies are not in the right position, and they can't handle the time under tension. And that's one of the talks I had with Chris Frankel. We were talking about, like, what's the next thing? And I agree with him. Time under tension. What can the body handle under tension for time? How much weight for how much time? So if you're measuring that, that's how you're building the resiliency of that person or athlete or grandma. So it's not add more weight, it's add more resiliency. And as you add resiliency, we can add weight, because we're not compensating anymore. Posture's better. Like I said, how's your core? Is your core strong, right? Are you able to correct your alignment? Are you optimizing your mobility? Are you restoring balance throughout the body? And then you can enhance performance. Most people just enhance performance, and the other things are a small part of it. I think we got to flip that over. And we talked about this, is to flip that over and get now 70% of it is the importance of correct your alignment. 70% of it is optimize mobility, and then restore balance throughout the body, 70% of that. Then we can do the 30%, go enhance performance, go do it, right? And then we'll have less injuries. And I think that's the key to this, which I think we have to start teaching across the board, is that's the foundation right there. That's actual core strength when I call it core, if that makes sense.
Loving it. Oh, it makes tremendous sense to me. Definitely, without a doubt. Yeah, I think for too long we've been putting the cart in front of the horse and expecting the cart to somehow shape the horse and allow it to be in front. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but it's the one I'm coming up with right now. And I think that if we can turn it around and start with the fundamentals and work from there, uh, I think the non-contact injury rate for most sports would plummet.
I 100% agree. You look at the 49ers, you look at the different teams. Now, football, 100% injury rate. It just happens. But hamstring pulls, calf strains, Achilles pulls, that's not a contact thing. That's a positional thing and
And
a muscle
yes.
resiliency thing and a correct posture. And what are you doing mobilizing with the joints? So again, I look at your best athletes are your best compensators. They will compensate and get it done. But if we can take those compensations away and reduce the dysfunction, right, that they have, less chance of injury, better resilience, long-term career. These are the things I want to get over to these pro teams and the college teams and the guys that really want to be athletes. I know the stuff you look at what I teach seems simple, but it is super effective and it's measurable. So you're
Yeah.
measuring everything. You guys measure your 40s, you measure your swing speed, you measure your blood pressure, you measure your heart rate, you measure all these things, but nobody's measuring mobility in the way of looking at yourself objectively to say, wow, I can put my feet at 60 inches apart. I can put my hand on a 6-inch block and I can rotate all the way open. Can you do that on both sides equally? And does it tweak your back or does it tweak your adductor or does it tweak your calf? These players should know this stuff. It's not guessing. Like, did you do your warm up? Some of the warm ups I watch, it's like, yeah, they're warming up and they're moving through range of motion, but there's no rhyme or reason to exactness to see how do you feel. You're warming up to see how you feel. And you go, like, God, my left shoulder's kind of tight today. I don't know what I did yesterday, but you better fix that before you start your event because you're going to compensate. And like I said, the more athletic you are, you'll get through it. Okay. But like Greg Rose says, it's not if, it's when. When are you going to hurt yourself? I'm hoping I can get you early and not have you compensate and not use that dysfunction to improve your performance. Because yeah, you're a fantastic athlete. You make 25 million a year. I want to help you not pull your groin. I want to help you not pull your hamstring with these simple movements that we're teaching. And so that's what I'm
Well,
excited about doing
you
with you
bring me
guys.
into, oh, totally. And you bring up probably a time for the last question here, but you bring up a concept that is it, it's spoken within our circles, and that is there's a concern that, from as far as I'm concerned, is unfounded because I haven't experienced it with the athletes I've worked with. But that is throwing coaches, golf pros, other coaches are concerned about trying to bring symmetry or balance back into a person's system because it would be detrimental to their athletic ability, their specialized ability, whether it's a fastball, the accuracy of a pitch, their long drive, their short game, their service return in tennis. They're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Well, no, we don't want to. We don't want to disrupt this. We don't want to try and create more symmetry and balance because that could throw them off. I don't know where that's coming from, to be honest, because I don't know about you, but I have found the exact opposite to occur. Not only are you going to reduce the compensatory actions in the symptoms that may manifest due to that, but you're actually going to enhance their performance, their accuracy, their endurance, their resiliency. But have you
Yeah.
found that too, or are you of the same mind as those people saying, "Oh, yeah, I don't really want to bring them into a more balanced place"?
I could argue on both sides and explain why on both sides. And I've talked
Yes.
to many people that work with major league pitchers that would say they worry about fixing certain things because they have a herky jerky action and they're, like a pitcher, right? Where they throw from a weird angle because their arm doesn't fit in this angle and it feels better here, but it slides the ball that way. So they want to not change, like you just said, get more symmetrical because then he's going to change his arm action and he has less movement on his ball. That can matter. So I can understand that, like if they're going to talk about that. But years ago, 5 years ago, my son was 12 and they said, hey, let's have a bench press contest with the bar. Okay. Now, the 12-year-olds took the bar and they did 18 reps. The high school kids jumped in and they used the bar and they did 38 reps. And then the college kids jumped in and did 78 reps. And they said, Bob, what can you do? And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done that in 25 years when I was, 25. And I'm thinking I did 104 and I could bench 315. So I'm thinking now I bench like 250, 240, not very strong. And God, 79 is going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So I get on there and I'm no idea. I get ready. I can try one time to try to get 79. and I get going 75, 100, 150, 200. Now, what the hell happened? How could I, at 50 years old, double what I did when I was 25? I was stronger when I was 25, but now I'm more functional. So I'll
Hmm.
let you guys figure it out yourselves. Do you think being more functional makes you stronger and more efficient and less chance of injury? Because my shoulders didn't burn at all this time. Last time I did it, when I was 25, those last 4 reps, I couldn't get the bar up because I couldn't get this shoulder to extend. This time, my triceps were the only thing I felt because I was in the proper position and my body was functional. So it was effortless power. And I could do it all day long, 200 at 50, but I couldn't do 100. And I couldn't do 150 when I was 25. Come on, think about it. So that's my argument, is the more functional you are, the more your body's in a better position, the better you're going to be able to be resilient, and the better power output you're going to have effortlessly. So that's what I saw for myself when I walked out that day and said, oh my gosh, this program's working amazing. Because I had nothing to compare it to as a 25-year-old. It's like,
Sure.
that was eye-opening to me to say, hey, now that I'm 50, I'm actually more functional than I was when I was 25, right? More mobile, the whole thing. And last funny story I was telling you, I was at the gym. I was messing around. I was on the ground. I was doing some stuff, and my daughter was sitting on the bike with my brother. And my brother's old school. He's the heavy lifter. He's the Olympic lifter. He does everything in the sagittal plane. He's a strong guy. He is hurt all the time. He pulls his calf. He pulls his hamstring. His knee hurts. I'll bob my neck. Oh my God. And I just tell him all the time, because he's my younger brother and he's the smartest guy in the room. So he doesn't listen to what I tell him. Hey, Bob, hey, Chet, do some windmills. Hey, Chet, do some runner stretch. Hey, Chet, right? And so my daughter's sitting next to him. And the funniest part is, my daughter, I'm doing all these things, medicine ball push-ups, I'm doing the wall windmills, I'm moving around the gym. They're on the bikes. And my brother goes to my daughter, goes, I got to start doing a little bit more of that stuff. My brother's really moving well. And Sophia goes, oh my God, you should see what he does. He does amazing things, right? And so my brother's like now feeling guilty. And he comes over to me that day and finally asked me, hey, Bob, how do you do those windmills again? Like, now he's getting interested because he's watching me do things that he can't believe I'm doing. But what I'm trying to say is, to you guys, why do you wait? Why do I have to do a miracle and just start doing these simple things? It's amazing how
Yep.
you will feel. And it's, like I said, it's the dirty dozen. They're quite simple, and implement into what you're doing. You don't need to change what you're doing, but at least add in these shiny objects, because you're going to be able to do what you love to do. I mean, that's the whole key here. We're just trying to stay alive so we
Love it.
can do what we love, So
All right.
it was a
Well, I
pretty
can't
funny
wait
story.
for you to finish that book. That's because that's going to be a good one to check out. Tell you what, with the minute or so remaining here, how do we follow you online, social media wise, LinkedIn, Instagram? Where do you go?
Yeah, at Bammetrics, Bammetrics, and then the website is bam-metrics.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Bobby Aldridge. So yeah.
Dude, this has been great. I really appreciate it. I know your day is probably more full than mine, and yet you find a way to sneak in an hour to have a good conversation. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship too. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rocky. Really appreciate it. All these years. Appreciate it.
Well, put that one in the books and throw it in the vault. We'll pull it out later. But man, I have such a fun time talking movement with Bobby. Be sure to check all his tools, his information, Bammetrics. You'll do yourself a favor. Check out RockySnyder.com, obviously. Go for continuing education. Satanta College, that RS10 code is good for 10% off. Remember, we're always on Instagram. Got a whole bunch of content out there. Maybe even pick up my book. We'll see you next week.